Michael's right here. So today is the 23rd of September 2021. I've been to Croft Castle with Michael Frost from the Lempster Meeting Centre, and today has exceeded all expectations. I've had a really interesting time with Michael, and I realised that it's so much more than the words that somebody says. It's the spaces between the words. It's the order of conversation and recollection. And I think I'd underestimated the enormous effect, beneficial effect, of being outdoors and being in nature has on kind of unlocking conversation, unlocking memories and thoughts. So Michael talked a great deal about all sorts of things, and sometimes as time went on he started to get a little tired, I think. His words became a little confused and he struggled to remember certain things, but it was quite subtle, and it was only in spending 3 hours with him that I really noticed. And what struck me was his incredible self-awareness, ability to self-reflect, and his awareness of the wider world. A few times the role of women and gender came up, and he was acutely aware of the kind of wrongs and rights, if there are any, of contemporary thinking about gender. So it's been a really interesting day, and I'm not sure how we're going to use these recordings, because I could edit the words so that we have a block of words specific to a certain place at Croft. And I'm wondering how much of the spaces between should go in, because we want to keep interest, and yet it's in those spaces that we learn an awful lot. And the quality of the voice. But most importantly, Michael said that he'd had a really lovely day, and it hadn't cost him a penny. But his feedback at the end and throughout was very positive. He seemed to really enjoy himself, so that's fantastic. And I wonder whether he'll remember next week. That's not important. The only important thing is that he's had a nice time today. I'm a bit nervous about the technology, whether that has worked okay, and we'll see. Time to stop recording. It's September the 27th, and I've been to Croft Castle with Yvonne. Yvonne had a lanyard with her with lots of little laminated cards on it about her condition and about how she's exempt from wearing a mask, and it had her medical information and emergency contact details. And I was astonished to see how much medication she's on for lots of different things, kind of supplements, but also medication that really must affect her level of response. You know, no wonder she falls asleep and is quiet a lot of the time. I suspect that, you know, as well as vascular dementia, her behaviour is very much influenced by her medication, and it's kind of easy to forget that sometimes. So that was one thing that struck me. And then the other thing I noticed is this kind of loop of dialogue that people with dementia and other people on different parts of the spectrum find themselves repeating. It's almost like a mantra. And so Yvonne repeated many, many times over the day the same little loop, the same little mantra of not wanting to be any trouble and really appreciating people and loving people and not wanting to be any bother and appreciating people and loving people. And it was almost like a script that would keep repeating itself. And whether that was something to comfort herself or whether it was something that happens if she's a little anxious, or don't know why it is, but there you go. Other than that, there were real moments, again, that, as with previous visits with people, I found out more about her in these last couple of hours than I have done previously. She really liked being outdoors and said it made her feel good, made her feel better to be out in the open. She noticed the birds singing and talked about conversations between birds. She seemed to like that idea. And she talked about her husband, and she spoke several times about her son being born prematurely and her really worrying about him when she was in hospital and being told in the morning that he was doing all right, and she was so relieved. And she told me that story quite a few times. It seemed that something we talked about just triggered that memory for her. It's the 29th of September and I've been to Croft with Roberta, and what struck me today was the thing about continuity. Roberta was great. She was absolutely on track. A little bit distracted by the wind. It was a very cool wind today, so that was a bit distracting. But towards the end of our visit, she went off to the toilet, and when she came out of the toilet, she had forgotten who I was, and yeah, there was a little time of confusion there for her. She couldn't remember who I was and wanted to know where the other woman was who had brought her to the castle. So that was interesting, and she talked a lot about working on the land and her family. She thought that the gravel was a carpet and a few leaves, a twig of leaves, was a tree on the floor. So a few visual interruptions, but we've had a lovely day. It's the 30th of September and that was a trip out with Michael. Lots of information to absorb, to process, and I hope we got the recording in the stable block because that was a really nice moment. Found it quite moving, really, what having a label does to someone. Changes their world absolutely and disempowers them. Yeah. It also makes me feel a little powerless myself, I suppose. want to make the world a better place, but yeah, difficult. It's Monday the 4th of October and I've been to Croft Castle with Liz, and there were moments we walked quite a long way, which was lovely. She really likes walking. And we saw some of the sculptures in Fishpools Valley, and she sat on the chair and was silent and gave a big sigh, which was really significant, I think. And then she talked about the animals in the air that she could hear, and they were playing music, and she could hear the music coming from different parts of the trees. So noticing the bird's song, but not quite finding the right words. And then when we were walking further up the valley, there was a flock of sheep sitting in a clearing, and she called them dogs. She liked the dogs. And she did a lot of talking in her continuous loop of conversation that she gets into. And I was worried that she might be anxious, and it was quite difficult to talk to her about whether she felt relaxed. Well, it wasn't difficult, but I wasn't sure whether she was relaxed or whether she was in a constant loop of conversation because she was not relaxed. So occasionally we'd sit and I'd ask her what she could notice, or I'd suggest that we closed our eyes and listened. And on the way home I put on some classical music, which was great because it helped us switch off from the loop of chatter. And we enjoyed the music, William Tell Overture, that she recognised. It's the 27th of October and I've been to Croft with Albert this morning. When we're at the Lumpster Meeting Centre, it's quite difficult to catch what Albert says sometimes. It feels like he's tripping over his words. So it was really lovely to have a bit of time and space for him to talk as we were in Croft Castle grounds. As before, most of the conversation happened when we were sitting on the bench underneath the tree, and he talked about his work and talked about climbing trees when he was young, and appreciated the peace and quiet and being outdoors. It was good. I think I'd overestimated people's energy levels a little bit, and it's very clear that very short walks is enough, even for people with more mobility. And that might be just habit. They get out of the habit of walking further. Maybe they don't get the opportunity to walk further, but certainly the kind of stamina levels are quite low. You have to listen quite carefully to find rest points and then give them lots of options of stopping and turning back. We found some walnuts, and that was nice. Albert picked them up and peeled them and talked about walnuts and chestnuts and how he liked eating chestnuts at Christmas. Yeah, a good day. It's the 28th of October and I've been to Croft Castle with Barbara. And Barbara was quite anxious about going out at first. And when she was offered the opportunity a few weeks ago when I wasn't there, and she'd refused because she couldn't remember who I was. But this morning I was due to take Bob, but Bob hadn't got a coat. So very impromptu, offered the opportunity to Barbara, and she said yes, which was fantastic. So, gosh, everybody has their own story to tell, and it feels like being outdoors and being one-to-one just opens those doors to the stories. I'm really amazed at everybody's unique story and how rich those stories are and how heartfelt and honest and true. Been looking at information this week about electromagnetic impulses from the brain. You know, we pick them up with EEGs and can read them, but what I've learnt is about the electromagnetic impulses that come from the heart and from the gut, and how strong these are. In fact, the ones from the brain are far stronger than those. The ones from the heart are far stronger than those from the brain. Far, far stronger. And it feels like with people living with dementia, it might be that their brain activity is compromised because of the disease, but their hearts still feel that depth of emotion and communicate that with such strength. And today, Barbara's heartfelt love and passion for the outdoors, for nature, and for horses was so evident and so clear. We went to the stable block at Croft, and it just brought back so many memories and tapped into her real knowledge of all things equine. Yeah, it was delightful. And she was very relaxed, very chilled out, until we started to drive back. And as we got back into Leominster, she couldn't quite work out where we were, and she didn't recognise the route. And I think there was a little bit of anxiety there that I was abducting her and taking her off somewhere. But as soon as she recognised where she was again, that was okay. Yeah. I would love to continue these one-to-one visits. I can't imagine how it might work for a group because of all the different unique energy levels and communication needs. And the silences still communicate so much. Seeing the processes that people are going through to tap into those feelings and those memories that they have. A little kind of moment where the brain is searching for the right words to express those things. And in a group situation, I think somebody else jumps in those moments, and then that's gone. That moment is gone. So one-to-one is really important. And not jumping into those silences, waiting and being patient is important, or feels important. But I can imagine doing a group visit for a tea dance or some kind of activity with a different purpose would be really lovely. Such beautiful surroundings, so well maintained, and it could be that National Trust is able to host some things when the weather improves. Just been up to Croft with Bob. The castle was actually closed, but we had a little walk down the avenue, and Bob talked about his athletic racing days, how he used to run, but he takes it quite easy now. He's very aware of his dementia and how that might get in the way a little bit. Interesting listening to him. He lost his driving licence because he had a little crash, so he can't drive anymore, and that was disappointing for him. And he seemed to be a bit frustrated. But a very nice man.